Welcome to 5 and 5 from the One Stop Co-op Shop, where I discuss 5 key elements of a game in about 5 minutes. I'm Michael Kelly, and today I'll be looking at the solo mode in Distilled, a 1 to 4 player competitive Euro of alcohol distilling. And a disclaimer that I was sent a review copy of this one. I really enjoyed Distilled solo play when I covered it back in a preview during the crowdfunding campaign. Does the final product continue to impress? Let's find out and get to the list. So first for a number 5 point, generally a pro from my standpoint, is the aging mechanic in the game. So you have a bunch of different spirits you can distill, and the ones that can potentially have the highest reward for them are the ones that get aged over time in your warehouse. But aging spirits has a nice risk-reward feel to it because you're not getting that immediate bonus, you're not getting that immediate influx of cash, but you tend to get way more victory points at the end, especially if you let them age for a while. So yeah, it's a fairly minor thing in the game, but this choice of whether you sell, or try to go for bigger victory points but with less money through aging is a pretty interesting one. My point number 4 is also generally a pro for my taste, and that's how you distill your spirits. So what you do is each turn you can distill one spirit, and you need water, you need yeast, and then you can put in as many sugars as you want, and each one's going to add more alcohol as well. And here's where the randomness comes in. This is the part that might frustrate people. You take all these cards, you shuffle them all together, then you take off the top card and the bottom card, and they are no longer part of your recipe, which in the worst case can mean that suddenly you don't have the sugars you need anymore, and you don't fulfill the requirements of the spirit you were going for, and it could mess up your victory points or your plans overall. That's the frustrating part, but usually the game gives you enough ways to mitigate this. If you just add in enough sugars, then you aren't going to have to worry about it, that it's not too big of a deal. And the other thing I like, which is again why this is a pro for me, is that the two things that come out of the recipe go into your pantry to use in a future turn. So you're not suffering too much. Like the alcohol that comes up can actually fill the yeast or the water spot. So it gives you more flexibility with your later spirits. It kind of becomes easier to distill as things go along, which from my understanding is thematically appropriate. Now, my number 3 point is a bit of a mix for my taste, although I will say that when it comes to Euro games, I tend to want a lot more variety, and this one is pretty good in that aspect, comparable to other Euros, but not amazing. But people who don't care about having a very different experience each time they play a Euro, this probably won't bother you at all. So on the positive sides of variety, you have tons of different characters you can play as. Also, you have different flights and mixes of spirits that you can distill. In the competitive game, you've got these spirit awards that give you objectives to shoot for that'll change game to game. In the solo mode, you have goal cards, which I'll talk about in a second, that change up what you're going for. And you have the ever-changing market that's going to give you different upgrades, different ingredients, different things. All of that is great. But when you get down to it, on the negative side, again, just for me potentially, you are doing the same thing every turn. You know, you are distilling spirits, and you're trying to sell them, or you're aging some of them. You're shuffling the cards. You're buying ingredients. I wouldn't really say there's like multiple routes to victory. You can do slightly different things, but in the end, you got to distill, and you got to sell, and you got to age. So yeah, it's pretty varied, but it's not going to like blow your socks off. Now, along sort of the same lines, going to be my number 2 point. This is the market phase, and this one I'll also call a bit of a mix. Your main choices in the game come down to this market phase. And first, kind of a cool thing is you have this basic market. So you always have the specific ingredients you might need available to you. You can never kind of get locked out of things, but you have a limit to how many of these you can buy per turn, generally 2. So this leads to some really interesting kind of choices. And then you can also buy premium ingredients and specialty items. And the big one, distillery upgrades. And this is kind of where the mix comes in. These can have pretty far-reaching powers for your distillery. But at least in my games, maybe it's just kind of the groupthink of how I play. I find I don't usually get more than like 1 or 2 of those. It's very expensive. And that sort of leads a bit to more of the sameness feeling in play sometimes. But if you're a better thinker than Mike is and you can combo things together better, then you might find that your distillery has like very unique and cool bonuses each game. So yeah, I wish the game had a bit more of a feeling of engine building. I wish what you were doing in round 7 was more different than what you're doing in round 1. But that's going to be based on your preferences and tastes. Some people might love these upgrades. And again, the market choices are really cool and thought-provoking. So there is a lot of good stuff going on here. And finally, my number 1 point, and this is focused on the solo mode specifically. This is a pro for my taste. I think this is great. So in the solo play, you're working through this sort of like pyramid-ish structure, and each of these cards has a different goal for yourself, and you start at the bottom, but you can see the middle row and the top row, so you can see kind of things you might want to be working towards long-term. And what you have to do is you have to snake your way up until you get to one of the topmost goals, so do at least 1 from every row. But then any choice that I love, this reminds me a lot of the Opolis button shy games, like Sprawlopolis, the goals that you get, at least some of them from the A and the B deck, the goals you get give you the sum of points that you must exceed. I think this is great. I think this kind of thing is what it takes for a beat your own score mode to feel exciting for me, and this does add a lot of variety to the solo play. The one negative is sometimes the goals will just be like totally out of your control, like won't really work very well. They do give you a one-time swap power, which just adds 5 points to the target score you have to achieve, but I like that flexibility. But overall, I love this little like pyramid kind of goal structure. Really clever design. So overall, you might enjoy Distilled if you like medium weight Euros, if you like cool solo modes that give you a variety of options and goals to go for each game, and also if you don't mind a bit of luck in your Euro game, because the little Distilling mini game can be a lot of fun, but can also sometimes be frustrating. On the other hand, you might want to avoid this one if you don't like Euros. If you want tons of variety in like factions and stuff, that's not the game's strong point. But if you want to see the game in action and judge for yourself, you can check out my old preview. It's pretty much the exact same game, so nothing has really changed much. Thanks for watching, good gaming, and I'll see you at the next stop.